Hello, Create Schools. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the beginning of the Vietnam War. This is just the introduction and basically explains how the United States and why the United States got involved. Okay, just you need to know a little bit of background information before you understand why we get involved. You need to understand why it happened. Basically, before World War One, Vietnam was ruled by France. Let me just point out where Vietnam is. Here is Asia. You can see China, and over here is where Vietnam is, right here on this corner. And a close-up, you can see it right here. And there's China right there. So, during World War II, Japan conquered Vietnam, and the Japanese people, here's Japan, treated the Vietnamese people very poorly. So a leader was born from that. His name was Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh is very important to learn. He is the major player in Vietnam. So Ho Chi Minh comes in 1945 to the city of Hanoi, which is the capital up here, and he declares Vietnam independent. So then what happens in 1945, French decide that they actually want Vietnam back. So let's repeat that again. Vietnam first was ruled by France, then Japan conquered them. Ho Chi Minh enters, says it's declare, and then French decide they want him back. This war lasted for 9 years, and Ho Chi Minh, who was communist, he had the north part, and then France controlled the south part. So then the country was divided by the United Nations in 1954 along the 17th parallel and said that elections were going to be held. Now, the United States was really worried about elections in Vietnam, thinking that maybe Vietnam would go communistic. And so the U.S. didn't want that to happen. So they were really worried and mad about the USSR because remember back in Eastern Europe, they did not have free elections. So the United States was, oh, wait, if we have elections here in Vietnam, they might not be free. What's going to happen? We just better make sure that everything's fine. So then we have Vietnam split in half at the 17th parallel, with the north part of Vietnam being communist and the southern part of Vietnam being capitalistic. Okay, if you're not done taking these notes, pause and continue writing them and start the video when you are done. Okay, on to the next slide. So why did America get involved? Like I just said, Vietnam, they were really worried that Vietnam would fall to communism if they had elections because of the USSR idea of free elections. And they had this theory called the domino theory. So here's my stack of dominoes, and as you know, if you push one domino, they go and they all fall. So they were worried that if Vietnam fell to communism, then other countries would also fall to communistic. So the South Vietnam depended on aid from the USA, and the USA was basically trying to help bolster their economy up to keep them capitalistic. We'll discuss their leaders shortly. And they were worried, America was worried that other countries like Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Japan, and other Asian countries would just fall if they fell. So that is called the domino theory. Easy theory to remember if you know what dominoes are. Okay, if you are not done, please pause and finish this. Okay, so here is the leader of the Republic of South Vietnam. His name is Diem. I hear it often also pronounced as Diem. So we will pronounce it Diem just to make it easier to remember how to spell it. But then, like I say, Diem is another way that it is also pronounced, probably the more correct way. So Diem was very anti-communist, but he was not popular with his people. So I kind of think about Batista when I think about Diem, just like Batista was not popular with the people, but yet the United States supported him in Canada. Diem was of the landlord class, which means he was from the rich class, and he definitely believed in class system, so he treated the peasants very poorly. He was Christian, even though the majority of the country was Buddhist, and he showed absolutely no respect for the Buddhist religion. And like I say, the majority, the peasants, were all Buddhist, and he was extremely corrupt. So he was not a very good guy, but he was on America's side, so America supported him. Okay, pause if you need to take more notes. Okay, so in comes the communist-led National Front for the Liberation of South Vietnam, or to be easier, the Viet Cong. So the Viet Cong are southern Vietnamese people who are against against Diem's reign in South Vietnam, and they are supported by the North Vietnamese people. So they are supported by Ho Chi Minh. So it was set up in December 1960. It basically, since Diem was so corrupt, that is where it came from. And like I said, they're Southern Vietnamese freedom fighters. Okay, they are not Northern Vietnamese, but they are supported by the Northern Vietnamese. The Northern Vietnamese are the Viet Minh. Okay, so here's how it works. So the Viet Cong, they started a guerrilla warfare against the Southern Vietnamese government. So here's your 17th parallel, which is the division between North and South. Okay, here is the border line of Vietnam, and here is the supply trail from the north to the south. So this way the Southern Vietnamese Viet Cong can get their supplies from the North Vietnamese, from Ho Chi Minh, and they called this aptly the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Okay, and so the Viet Cong were attacking government forces, officials, and buildings, and the countryside was very unsafe, and they attacked American Air Force and supply base. So obviously also the Viet Cong were greatly against the Americans because the Americans are supporting Diem. So the Southern Vietnamese government set up something called a strategic hamlet program. They had decided that they're going to move all the peasants from where they live to certain controlled areas that would be protection for them. And you can't see me, but I'm doing protection in quotes. Basically, this is a way that the Southern Vietnamese government can keep an eye on the peasants, because the thing about the Viet Cong, and we'll repeat this later, is the Viet Cong blend into the Southern Vietnamese people. They have no uniforms. They're just, generally young men who are fighting, and so they can blend very easily into the countryside, very easy to the people. And so by moving these villages away from where they are actually from to a more controlled area is a way to help them, the Viet Cong, not be able to blend in with them. Now, hopefully it is ringing already in your head. That sounds like a horrible idea. Why on earth would someone want to be uprooted from their home area and put somewhere else? So the peasants did not like it. So the Americans helped with this, giving money, building material, and food. So another one of those brilliant ideas by the Americans. Okay, if you have not finished taking the notes, please pause. Okay, so on to the next slide. So this is how involved should Americans be in Vietnam. Well, in the beginning, this is my absolute favorite chart in Vietnam. Please just go ahead and try to get this picture into your head. We have Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. So in the Kennedy time, there were very few troops. They were mainly just advisors. So when it started in the 60s, if you remember, the Strategic Hamlet Program was in 1960. So here, no one was sent. Here, very few people were sent, no one died, and nobody died up until the end of 1963. So in 1960, Kennedy only sent advisors. There was no actual troops sent in there. So there were people there just to go and help. Okay, Kennedy did not want to commit to a war. Remember, he had just had Cuba, and that was quite rather embarrassing. So he didn't want to blunder into a war that's unclear about aims or how to get out again. And he remembered how bad Korea was. But then, lo and behold, in 1963, he was assassinated. Now, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ for short, becomes president. That was Kennedy's vice president. And he was committed to a full-scale conflict. He said, I'm going to stop the spread of communism. I'm going to make sure the domino theory doesn't happen. And he sent troops in. But of course, he didn't have a lot of support. And so he just slowly sent troops in. He had to bolster people to come in with this idea. And we'll explain how that happened later. Go ahead and pause if you are not done. Okay, on to the next slide. So in August 1964, the catalyst happened that allowed the United States to enter the Vietnam War. In the Gulf of Tonkin, so here's Vietnam, here's your 17th parallel, here's the North Vietnamese area, this is the Gulf of Tonkin. There were some warships, specifically one called the Maddox, that on August 2nd, the Maddox was fired upon. Okay, so that means that the North Vietnamese fired upon the Gulf of Maddox. That allowed the Americans to get very upset, and then America passed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. And this gave the power to the president in order to take action, and Johnson started a full-scale war. Now, there's a lot of conspiracy theories associated with this Gulf of Tonkin. Many people say that actually the Maddox wasn't even fired upon, they just said they were. Others say yes, they truly were. So that is always something to remain. Was the Maddox really fired upon, and so therefore they had justification in order to do this? Or is this actually something that the Americans kind of made up or, misinterpreted, and because of that they joined in? So something to think about. Pause if you haven't taken the notes already. Okay, so as a consequence, America starts the Operation Rolling Thunder. Okay, it lasts 3 years, and basically it is a carpet bombing campaign, which means they just lay fire to tons and tons and tons. It's called carpet bombing because they don't just do one bomb, they drop hundreds of bombs at one time and blow tons of things up. And they were targeting North Vietnamese cities, factories, army bases, and of course the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Okay, pause if you need to take some notes. Okay, and now March 1965 is the official start of the U.S. in the Vietnam War. 3,500 U.S. military come in as actual troops, and they land on shore of Da Nang. So they have the continuous carpet bombing in North Vietnam, but actually that really doesn't work. It just makes the inhabitants much more angry with the Americans and want them to fight against the Americans even more. A picture I always have in my head of Vietnam is helicopters. This was a huge helicopter, huge plane war. Helicopters were constantly flying troops in and out of war and combat situations. Okay, so here's another picture. I mean, massive amounts of helicopters. And here is some carpet bombing. I've got more discussion we'll have on that in another video. So the U.S. used 2 military tactics: massive air power and chemical weapons. Here is something called Agent Orange. Basically, its idea is to get rid of the leaves and things. It's a defoliator. So get rid of all the leaves. Then, of course, the Viet Cong cannot hide as well. And we'll discuss all these tactics later. And, yeah, we'll discuss those later. So something to look forward to in the next video. Okay, finish up those notes if you haven't already done so. Okay. So within 3 years, the Vietnam had almost 550,000 U.S. troops. The U.S. was involved into the war. It was widely criticized. Very interesting, this was one of the first televised photographed war. So World War I and World War II had a lot of photographs, but Vietnam actually it happened pretty much while it was going, with just some delays. This is Walter Cronkite. He is a very, very famous reporter in America who reported a lot of stuff on the Vietnam. So one of the reasons why Vietnam is so known and is so publicized is because of the media, and we will discuss that as well later. Okay, pause. Well, actually, you can stop the video, take these notes, and if you have any questions, please just let me know. Bye.